stories out there of strength, resilience, and courage, and we're on a mission to bring all of them to you. Welcome to Empowered Voices Amplified.
Our guest today is Wedzi Garwe. Wedzi is a financial planner and mortgage broker who has worked in financial services since 2007. I don't know what I was doing in 2007, but I know that's a pretty long time. Working for some of Australia's leading financial institutions in various roles. His goal through his company, A Better Way Financial Partners, is to make a difference to everyone he encounters financially, with the hope that this will have a positive impact on their health as an end result because of the peace of mind knowing their financial affairs are in order. Welcome to the show, Wedzi. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thank you, Magnus. Thank you, Sandra. And I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to have you.
Share with you. And
this is a great opportunity just to get to know you a little bit better. So you made the decision to migrate to Australia. When did that happen, and what made you decide to make that move?
That happened in 2004. And initially, I actually didn't want to move to Australia. I actually wanted to move to England because that's where my dad was living. But then the visa just didn't work out, and the opportunities back home were limited. So, I got a lot of encouragement just to find a way to, get out of the country and find some other place where I could get decent opportunities. And one of my friends from high school who had actually migrated to Australia is the one who gave me some guidance, and that's how I ended up here.
And what were your expectations of Australia before you moved here?
To be honest, I think I was quite naive, and I didn't actually know what Australia was like. I didn't do my homework or anything. So in my mind, I thought I was going to be living like Miami Vice. I don't know if you know that old show.
Not Crocodile Dundee.
And I thought everything was going to look like Miami, how you see it on TV, beaches, green everywhere. And so it was a bit of a different expectation, but I wasn't disappointed by the Australian beaches at all. Love it.
Good. And how has your experience been for nearly 20 years next year for you? How has it been for you?
It's been an interesting journey because I guess when I initially came, I thought I was just purely going to study, and then maybe I was going to work for a year or two and then go back home. That was my original idea. And some of it maybe because I was young and I didn't realize that there was a strong possibility that I was actually going to end up living here. And after I got here, one of my uncles, he kept emphasizing to me that I need to look into visas and I need to take and seize the opportunity while it's still there, because he was like, the immigration rules change and it gets tougher once they fill all the spots for the different things or skills that they're looking for. And I remember at the time, as a skilled migrant, you didn't need to do the work experience. All you needed to do was to have your qualification and submit it to the immigration department. And that was it. So I literally finished my degree, which had an accounting component, took it to the CA, the Chartered Accountancy Body. And then they stamped it, wrote me a letter. And then I took that, went to the immigration office, and the rest was history. So it was relatively easy at the time. And then a few years later, everything that my uncle said to me came to pass. I remember seeing other people having now to do work experience and struggling to find the jobs to be able to get through that work experience. And all I could think of was what my uncle had said to me. So there's a big part of my journey where if I didn't spend those first maybe 3 to 6 months with my uncle, my journey might be very different, because he taught me so much. I used to shop at Lifeline, and I used to shop at what's that shop that everyone hates? Cash Converters. Not to poo-poo their brand or say anything negative about their brand, in those days, they really helped me. He had taken me to David Jones, to Foot Locker, and to all the nice shops, and show me those shops. And he said to me that, while you don't have a job, you can't afford to shop here. And until you have a steady job and you've finished your studies, this is not your shop. And most people would make the mistake of going there and spending all their money there. They would have all the nice things. And he used to call it a fake lifestyle for someone who was in university. And the word of the day was survival. He just emphasized to me, everything is just about survival at this point. How much pocket money do you have? That's not a lot of money. It will be finished just like that. And then after taking me to the shopping mall and going through all those stores, we drive around the corner, and then we end up at the Lifeline shop. And it's like, you've got no job at the moment, and even if you do get a job, it's not going to be steady. You've got uni fees to pay, and you've got to look after yourself. And the uni fees are international fees, so you're paying maybe double or three times what a local student would pay. So this is where you shop. And I know the girls at church are going to be like, you're probably thinking the girls at church will be looking at you like, oh, look at him in his old clothes. And he was like, they won't have a clue, and they'll just think, he always had a wardrobe full of clothes. They won't know how old those clothes are, but this is where you shop. And then he also got me an old bike that I used to ride from his house to the bus stop because he lived in Baronia Heights, and it was a bit of a distance to get to Browns Plains Grand Plaza to catch the bus. But that was, I guess, the early days.
And
I
how
feel
did
like
you go?
everyone needs an uncle like
Yes.
an uncle like yours. Every student needs an uncle like yours.
That should be like your first year is, when you first become a student. That should be
Yes.
like survival 101
Yes, you can say that.
as a student.
It was
There we go.
definitely
Survival
survival
101.
101 because even when it came to grocery shopping, he taught me at the time. I think Coles had a red and white home brand
Yes.
in those days, and then Woolies had a blue and white home brand. So he taught me whenever I went to the shops, my trolley should not be looking colorful, and it should just be either red and white or blue and white, because that's all I could afford, and the food tastes the same.
Exactly.
That is true.
The food
Very
tastes the
true.
same. And then he taught me about how, particularly, I guess, like students that came from my home country, when they got here and the parents are not there anymore, how people just behave and operated. And because he was like an elder, almost like a pastor in a church, he would hear a lot of stories from, I guess, the people in the congregation when they come with their problems and that. So he really knew and understood the lay of the land and how people behaved and operated. So when I was now going through my uni life, I was literally the oddball because I wasn't doing any of those things, and I was just watching it happen. I didn't go to parties. I didn't. There was a lot of things that I just didn't do. Not that I would do them normally anyway, but that just put an extra something on it, so I could actually just get through, do what I needed to do, and get
That's
out of it.
amazing maturity, because you wouldn't have been very old at the time.
No.
Well done. Once you got through uni and you got your qualifications and, was out in the world, how did you go with employment? Straight away?
Yeah, I got a job pretty straight away. I was fortunate that I had one of my friends who used to work at a call center, and they did telephone surveys. So I did that for about a year before I actually finished uni, and that gave me really solid training ground, because you hear it all when you're on the phones and you're just coming from a different country. So some people would, I guess, suggest that I sound Indian, and maybe I might have been from India, and then maybe my name was Indian. But some of it, I get it now that some of it was like maybe Aussie banter. But to someone like me, it didn't feel good. It didn't feel nice. And I remember a couple of times getting angry on the phone. I wouldn't necessarily express it to the customer, but my managers could tell that this is not how he normally conducts himself, and then they'll come and pull me off the phone after the conversation, just to have a conversation with me and encourage me to just shake it off, and each every single call as an individual. One customer is not the same as the next. So coming from that call center background and that type of training, it made it easier for me to find jobs after that. So I moved from there, and my very first job, I was a debt collector. I used to work for GE. Yeah, so I had all the nice jobs to begin with.
That would have been an eye-opener. And again, lessons learned about how to manage money, most definitely.
It was. Not that I learned all the lessons, because I was really young at the time, but I got a strong sense of how, you end up in a very bad place. Because I remember myself getting stuck in some credit card debt, and it wasn't even a lot. It was just maybe like $2,000, because in those days you start earning a consistent paycheck, the bank sends you something in the mail, and it's like a pre-approved. All I needed to do was either just call them and say, "Yep, I'll have it," or to just tick the box, sign it, put it back in the reply paid envelope, and then a couple of weeks later, the credit card will be in my mailbox. And then as your pay increased, you get more of those, but for different things. You get a pre-approved car loan, pre-approved personal loan, and so I could see how. Or looking back now, I can see how people would get stuck, but it was just that one credit card that I got really stuck on for a while because I love books, and when I had it, I just went nuts in the bookstore, and then before I knew it, I had $2,000 to pay back, and I wasn't earning a lot, so it was hard. It was hard to pay them back that money.
You've mentioned the whole credit card and pre-approved loan. What would be, because you're a financial planner now and we can get some free advice right now. So, Wedzi, what would be your advice to migrants who are new to Australia and receive a pre-approved loan letter in the mailbox? Because we know they come. I think we had only spent six, maybe 12, almost 8 months in Australia
Mhm.
when we got a pre-approved loan letter for $50,000.
Yeah. Wow.
$50,000.
That's
And
great.
I'm glad we didn't take it or we didn't pursue that. But what would be your advice for someone who will probably need that money at that time,
Yeah.
but they are still new to Australia?
I would say just do that. Just cut it up and throw it in the bin because it's going to be more trouble than what you think. And why I say that is because of my job. I guess I get the privilege of going behind the scenes, at everyone's puppet show and seeing what happens with people's personal finances and how they manage their money. And I get to see how a lot of people can get that $50,000 credit card and agree to it and go using it, whether they buy themselves a car with it or it's clothes, shoes, all sorts of fancy things. So everything around them actually looks absolutely amazing. Aesthetically, everything is amazing. But what they're going through is quite significant. And the stress of debt actually takes a significant toll on people's health because it all starts with the mental, but then it turns into so many other things. So I'd actually encourage people not to go near credit cards if they can help it, because a credit card is not an emergency fund. You work towards building that emergency fund. A credit card is like, if you won the lotto, you didn't really necessarily work for that money. It's so easy to just spend that money, but the only difference with the lotto to the lotto is with the lotto, you spend it all, it's gone, no problem. With the credit card, you spend it all, and the bank still wants their money back. And now you have to work, and there's significant interest on them, and that can take years to pay off. And I see it all the time. So I'll just say, stay away, be conservative, live within your means, and just embrace where you are in your journey at that time. If you have to go and be the lifeline shopper like I was, do that. And there's nothing wrong with op shopping actually, because every now and again I find myself actually in an op shop just looking around, and you'll be amazed the things that you find in there.
Well, it's on
Hmm.
trend again now, isn't it? It used to be
Yeah.
a little embarrassing. I remember when I was a child, my
Hmm.
mum would always drag us around the op shops, and a small country town. You'd say, people would know
Yeah,
me. People know me here. But now it's sustainability, it's reuse, so it's the place to go, and
yeah,
people
and
love
it can be
telling you what
retro.
they've found.
We do op shopping with friends and it's actually like an outing.
Hmm.
And if I'm not op shopping, then I'm buying high quality clothes that I know have been responsibly sourced, or so like Sandra said just now, it's a good thing now. I mean, if you're shopping at Lifeline and any op shop, kudos to you. You're
Yeah,
saving the planet.
you are. And sometimes you find like even let's say with furniture, you can find some really good antique pieces,
Mm.
like really good solid wood that someone has just decided. And it's about where you go as well. Like I remember when I lived in Noosa, that's when I realized sometimes you just have to go on your map and look for the really nice neighborhoods. When all the rich people throw their stuff, it's still pretty good usually.
There you go. There's a tip, isn't it?
I like that when rich people throw away their stuff. Okay. Written down.
When curbside cleanups, they could be good.
Yes. Oh, we've just had one. We've just had one, which was lovely because we had a few things that needed to be collected. So, Wedzi, you've been in Australia for a really long time. What are some of the things that you have experienced that you've just thought to yourself, are you kidding me? Like are you kidding me moments?
Oh man, there'll be a lot of them. I remember like some really simple ones, low hanging fruit, would have been maybe when I was in uni, and you realize maybe sometimes people just haven't had like exposure to a lot of things, and you actually realize that like some of those students, some of those people that go to uni or TAFE and that, they're the ones that actually I guess get to experience the multicultural environment more so than someone maybe that's living purely in a small country town and doesn't actually come up to the big city, because a lot of us migrants migrate to the big cities, and whenever we migrate to the small towns, it's because maybe the visa actually is asking us to do that. It's not that we want to arrive. When we're dreaming about coming to Australia, we're not dreaming about coming and going into a small country town maybe that's landlocked. We want to be where it's all happening. I remember when I was in uni, one of my connect groups, one of the girls actually literally asked, and I remember hearing this as a joke, but I actually heard someone say this, and they're like, "Is Africa a country?" And it's just one of those things where you just realize sometimes, when people haven't traveled or are not exposed to certain things, there's no way they're going to understand, I guess, some of those little things that we might either find offensive in some instances, and in some instances, it might just be a case of we are actually not understanding that this person just hasn't had exposure. If we were actually able to put ourselves in their shoes as well, maybe we might be able to look at it slightly differently. Some other times it would have been looking for a job, and maybe the person who's supposed to interview me won't agree to speak to me because they can't pronounce my name. And just because they can't pronounce my name, they believe that chances are I can't actually speak English, or I can't actually speak English well. And they might have had an experience with someone else who they might have employed, and maybe they struggle to understand each other. But now everyone who comes after that, if they just see a name that they feel they can't pronounce, they just automatically take the resume and just put that aside. And it might not even be a conscious thing. It might just be an unconscious bias where automatically, regardless of how good the resume looks or in that, they'll just take it, put it aside, rather than pick up the phone and speak to the person to actually hear what they're like and judge for themselves before just
This one
looking at
is a
it.
big one. The name one is a huge one. There was a study and a paper that came out, actually a few papers that came out about how a lot of people in Australia, a lot of migrants in Australia with foreign sounding names, some of them have had to change their names to
Mhm.
just to get an interview. And the moment they change their names to Anglo-Saxon, is that what we
Mm,
call it?
yes,
Anglo-Saxon sounding names, they got an interview.
that
They
is.
didn't change anything else on the resume except the name, and they got an interview.
I've heard about that, and I've actually seen a lot of people that I know that have actually changed their names, and they've all got like English sounding names. But for me, I guess one of the things was when I first moved to Australia, because my dad had lived in England at that point for maybe like 4 years at that point, or 5 years. He impressed upon me never to change my name and to use my first name. I've got a middle name, but that middle name is not on my birth certificate. It's like a Christian name. And he told me never to give that name to anybody. Just give them what's on the official documents, and they will learn how to pronounce those names. And if you really think about it, like we can all pronounce all the names of the football players, the basketball players, the netball players. Doesn't matter where they're from. If they're a superstar, we can do it. So why can't we do it for everyone else?
That's very true.
This one we could talk about for a really long time because I'm passionate about it. I'm really passionate about it. But what are some of the key obstacles or setbacks that you encountered as you were trying to build your career and eventually starting your own business?
Just the unconscious bias sometimes, like someone that's like me or that looks like me, is not necessarily, I guess, the person that like, I don't know whether this is going to sound wrong. And as someone who's like maybe white Australian might not naturally think to trust someone like me. Because when I first moved to Australia, you would always hear the jokes about the Nigerian prince. And there was like a few different like stereotypes. I've had like one place where I worked where these clients, I went and I had a few meetings with them, and we were getting along really well. They'd actually been to the office. We After one of our meetings, I think it might have been after the second or the third meeting, about a week later, I don't know whether they'd spoken to some friends or some family or someone else. They sent an email to the office asking whether our office was associated with Africa. That was the deterioration of that like relationship, and we didn't do work with them again. That was literally literally it, and it was jarring because the last meeting I'd had with them, the wife was a really proud baker, and I remember she packed cookies for me to take back to the office and share around with everyone. So in my mind, I'm now thinking, how did we go from breaking bread, sharing cookies, and everything was so lovely and fantastic, to are you guys associated with Africa? And I was like, well, I'm African. What do you think? Automatically, I guess, but like it was just such a negative thing. And there's so many instances that are similar to that where, people come into the meeting, and because sometimes when you're just speaking on the phone, I might not sound, I guess, like the African guy they saw on TV who was putting on an accent or whatever. And you can see, people's faces literally drop that this is Wedzi, this is our advisor. And like now they're here and we have to sit down. They're not just going to turn around and go away. Otherwise, it's just not going to look good for everybody. Then you can see it as we actually go through the meeting that like, they start to calm down because they realize that you actually know what you're talking about. You can answer all their questions and you answer them really well. And you're honest, where you don't know something, you're actually noting it down, saying, hey, I'm going to get back to you, da, 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 or calling one of your colleagues. They're realizing that you've got a bit of a team and all of that. But like, at the end of the day, what I've found is for my type of business, the best thing for me is actually to get clients that come referred, that have already been kind of like almost like told, hey, Wedzi is from Zimbabwe, he's African, da da da. But I remember one of my clients, she described me as, he's a beautiful man. Yeah.
That's what you need.
Then that meant for their friends when they came in, they were not going to have that jaw dropping experience of, oh, this is Wedzi.
So sort of like softening people up before meeting you.
Yeah, so something like that. And don't get me wrong, it could happen with like with anyone. Even a white Australian male could go through something similar, but just maybe not to the same extent. Not like that. Not like a shock of this is the person that we have to see. This is the person that is going to be helping us because of all the things that TV sometimes pushes, the stereotypes that we then carry on as well and talk about, that Africans maybe are like this, and then all the stories of the scammers and that don't help. And the fact that they get told so much, we get so much of our negative stories told, we don't get enough of the good ones. And every single culture's got some scammers. Every single culture's got some corruption.
Yeah, you've touched on this briefly, but we know that from Africa as a continent, has produced some of the wealthiest, some of the most, tech advanced individuals who are running huge companies. We've got a lot that are on the board executive teams for Google, for, Apple. Like you can name a lot of companies and a lot of technology that's been advanced by individuals from the African continent. And we also know that it's really coming up as a techno hub, and there's a lot of technology coming out of that space. So where do you think people, particularly here in Australia, get this misconception about what Africa is as a continent and who Africans are as a people? And I cringe as I say this because we know that we are all so different. We're as diverse as anyone
Mm,
else can be. So you can't say African people are like this
yes.
because we're different. But where do you think that perception, and I would call it fear as well, comes
No.
from?
I think it's because a lot of the times we're not the ones telling our own stories. So that's why, stuff like this is really important. And in Australia, yes, it is a diverse country, but it's not quite as diverse yet. To give you an example, the first time I went to England, I walk out on the street out of my aunt's house, and man, I just felt like I was back home. You know, I literally kind of had to pinch myself, like, is this real? Is that many? That many of us? That many people that look like me. yes, they might dress differently because some are Nigerian, some are Ugandan, some are South African and whatnot, and we all dress differently because we are actually all different cultures. But just seeing so many of us, and like a significant mix. When I think of when I lived in Nusa, I could literally step outside and I'll be the only one. There'll be no one else out there that might actually look like me in certain spaces. And because we don't have that level of diversity, that means people get to form their own ideas, whether it's from TV or a book that they read or some music that they listen to. So I actually get excited. I always like tap my wife on the shoulder if we're, let's say, at Coles and the checkout person is black. I'm like, oh man, look at that kid go. And I actually want to go down that checkout and just give them a thumbs up because I'm just happy that there's more of us, and the more of us that are out there doing different things. I want more people from my background doing my job. So when people go to see a financial advisor, it's not like, oh, you're the first black financial advisor I've ever met. That shouldn't be a conversation. They should
Not in
feel that
2023.
we should all be trusted because there's so many of us that they're seeing actually doing a good job and so many good news stories that they're hearing. That's what I think maybe could change that narrative if we get to
So,
be out.
representation in media, and this is something that Sandra and I and Stacey and Orada are really passionate about with the podcast and the magazine Skilled Migrant Professionals. It's about amplifying the stories that we don't ordinarily hear, or even have access to. So yes, we'll continue doing what we're doing. And with you, a financial planner,
Mm.
advisor, and mortgage broker. Can you tell us a little bit about why you started your business and why you decided to work within this field?
What made me work in financial planning in particular was I actually had a friend of mine who already owned a business. He was like he's a South African gentleman, but he's lived in Australia for maybe over 40 years, and he's run his business maybe for like over 20 or so years. I just got a chance to catch up with him through church, and through his influence, that's how I actually ended up doing the financial planning courses and that, because I guess, aspired to some of the things that I saw him do. And I love maths and I love people. And financial planning sort of like brings those two things together. And that's how I ended up working in that space.
And what motivates you to keep pushing forward?
I guess you could say, naively optimistic and hopeful for people, that I always see the good in people. And I just want to be helpful. And I love to see people laugh and people put a smile on their faces. I always say, if let's say a Nando's or coffee club paid the exact same, I wouldn't do what I'm doing. I'd just be out there serving coffee and just having laughs with all the customers. That's what I would be doing.
Wow.
Sounds like a good thing to do. I think we should all try doing a little bit more of that.
That would be nice. Someone has to pay for the coffees, though.
True.
Yeah. So, just before we wrap up, Wedzi, what would be your advice to migrants just coming into the country and they're trying to find their feet, see how they can, navigate finances, trying to understand the financial system because it is different from what most countries use? What would be your advice to them?
I guess keep the main thing, and just remember why you're here, and really focus on that one day at a time. You're going to get to where you want to go eventually, but you don't have to manufacture your lifestyle. You don't have to be sending money home that you don't have. If you don't have it, you don't have it. You'll be surprised. The people back home, they were surviving before you came here, and they'll be surviving after you're gone. So don't strain yourself just purely because you're here and you think the people back home all believe that you've made it or something. Don't create an artificial sort of lifestyle and an artificial image, because the people back home might actually be truly believing that you're doing well, but you might not be, and putting unnecessary pressure on yourself. So just take it easy, as the Aussies say, and one day at a time.
Very good advice. One day at a time. Do not create an artificial lifestyle, and remember why you are here. Thank you so much, Wedzi. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you and getting to know you and your journey a little bit more. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
If they want to connect with me, they can find me on LinkedIn, but it's actually my full name, Wedzi Garwe, or they can find me on Instagram through my business handle, betterwayfp.com.au, or on Facebook as well. Those three main social media platforms they can find me from, or the website, betterwayfp.com.au.
Thank you so much again, Wedzi, for joining Sandra and I on Empowered Voices Amplified. And it's been such a great conversation. And if you've listened to this and you've got a few questions about money and budgeting, Wedzi is the right person to talk to. Send us an email or reach out to him. And if you have any questions or any suggestions that you'd like to talk to us about, send us an email as well, and we would be happy to look at it and get back to you. So stay empowered, stay in your empowerment zone, and we will see you next time.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you, Wedzi.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Magnus.